It's great to see that we've got a number of friends joining us for our first FSA webinar, and certainly looking forward to chatting with Christian today. I'm just going to bring his video on. So I guess just a little bit of background to our webinar series. I'm hugely fortunate, and if I look down that participant list that we've got, I'm hugely fortunate to know some great people in education who are making a real difference. And I just thought it was tragic that we're having these great conversations and yet not everybody has the opportunity of listening in and more importantly, having the opportunity to ask questions of some of these great people changing the face of education, not only in Australia, but internationally as well. So our first guest ever on the FSA webinar is Christian Williams, and we'll get him to do a little brief self-introduction at the moment. We'd really encourage you to write in any questions that you have using the chat function. We're going to go for about 45 minutes today. It's just going to be very much a free-flowing conversation. So thank you, Christian. We did have a go at this about a week ago, and the tech basically killed us, and we all had to go for a number of red wines after. So thanks for giving us a second go.
No worries, anytime. It's great to chat.
So who is Christian Williams?
I like to think I'm just a teacher. I've had a really interesting background into the profession, but my job is I work as the Enterprise Academy Manager at Mentone Girls. It's an awesome school, and I work across prep to year 12, and my job is to make sure I'm doing whatever we can to make our girls love coming to school, and that we're creating life-changing experiences for them so they can just do awesome things when they leave us.
Now, you know I'm not going to correct you through the whole of this presentation, but I always stop people when they say they're just a teacher. I think, obviously that we just fulfill an enormously important role at school. And whilst we all want to be student focused, we need to be people focused. So we'll just delete that just a teacher because I've known you for many, many years and you are an excellent practitioner. So, mate, tell me about that role. There are not too many schools that have a role as sort of enterprise coordinator. Tell me what it looks like on a day-to-day basis.
Well, it's pretty unique, and it only came about because our principal was a bit of a visionary and kind of identified enterprise and entrepreneurship as a strategic focus back in 2006. So my job is essentially a mix of business development and leadership role, and also one-on-one teaching. So I guess you'd relate it to learning support. I do a lot of one-on-one work with girls, getting them to start their own businesses, to see where they're at. We've had over 100 girls, in the last 2 years create their own business, and we've got staff leadership programs. We've got new subjects that we're developing, and then a lot of work behind the scenes with making sure that we are creating a model of best practice and creating opportunities to inspire other teachers in schools to embrace a culture of entrepreneurship, because it's something that I think it's gone beyond a need. I think it's approaching a duty of care that we're giving all of our kids as many opportunities as possible to succeed when they leave us, because the world's changing so quickly that we've got to change the way that we prepare kids for it.
Absolutely. One of the questions that we've got at the moment is this whole differentiation between enterprise skill and entrepreneurial studies. Do you think there's a difference, or is it really a matter of semantics?
Well, I just think it's semantics. I think we've been being conditioned to look for really clean definitions and frameworks and structures that we can just add into our existing paradigm. So I don't really worry about what it is. I'm more worried about the action that happens. And I think by having a bias for action as opposed to planning, you can find out what the real skills are the kids are actually developing, not what's set out in a really fancy PDF.
Which I guess marries into that whole concept of entrepreneurship, isn't it? It's not so much heavy planning. It's about failing fast, failing quickly, and learning from that.
Oh, 100%. I see my role is not to teach people how to start a business. My job is to find and to nurture, enthusiasm and passion. And I think when kids are enthusiastic or excited about things, that's where the magic is. But you've got to dig deep, and you've got to be building relationships with kids, so that way they feel they're in a safe place and they trust you enough to open up about what they really care about. And then that's where you start. You don't start with a program and an idea. You start by getting to know your kids so well that you can create a life-changing experience for them while they come to school. That's the way I look at it anyway.
Yeah, look, and I think that was one of the things that really excited me when we've chatted before and, you know, I'm the first to say that, you know, you're not the only one out there doing great things in entrepreneurship, and you've never claimed that either. But the thing that's really that I've admired about your stance is you actually see from our previous discussions, you actually see entrepreneurship as very tightly aligned with a wellbeing model. Is that correct? Could you talk us through that?
Oh, totally. I think, you know, everyone knows that the most important thing we've got to do for kids is make sure they feel happy and safe. Otherwise, they're not going to learn. And I think so much of my role in particular is identifying how we can make that happen, you know, with all of our kids. And that is the best place to start with entrepreneurship, because in the real world, you start something because you're passionate about it, or you've identified an area that you could do something really well in, so you go for it. And that's what entrepreneurship is about. It's nurturing enthusiasm and excitement, because kids get excited about stuff. And when you can hit that, you can take them to a level of mastery in whatever skill they are interested in. And then you can really focus on entrepreneurship as a means of building complex problem-solving skills, critical creative thinking, every general capability you can list in a curriculum. You can hit through an area of passion or excitement that a kid has. It just takes a bit of effort and being willing to go with the flow when things don't work.
And fail and learn from that.
Oh, totally. It's just part of the process. But I think someone asked me what are the biggest challenges. No, I think that the kids have great ideas and they get really excited about stuff. But the longer it takes for someone to listen to them and to take action and implement and test an idea, the longer that takes, the less enthusiasm you get. So the role of a teacher or a mentor or a supportive friend for an entrepreneur is to help the person take action as quick as possible and do something. Because once you've done something, you can reflect on it, you can learn from it, you can do it better next time. Sometimes, failure doesn't have to necessarily be, a milestone. It can be. You can celebrate it. You can do whatever you want, but as long as you do stuff.
I think the scary thing is that enjoyment, that enthusiasm, that sort of crazy passion, it really does, that is a huge part of the entrepreneurial thing, but it's so unlike most kids' school experience. It's almost the opposite for many students, not all, but for many students it is. Do you find that some of the students have difficulty sort of just letting go and actually following their passion, trusting in the process?
Oh, totally. I think it's not something that's natural to come out and say, hey, by the way, I really, I want to make my own dresses, right? It's not something that you normally talk about. It takes a lot of investment in relationships and building rapport and building trust. And it's not just from a teacher to a student. It's, it's peer to peer. But these things come out when you have authentic relationships and real conversations. And that can only happen if you create a space and a culture of conversation. And when things come up, you have to have the background pedagogical knowledge to say, you know what, I saw something straight away and we're going to run with it because it's going to be good. And you really can't fail when you have that type of mindset where you're ready to go 24/7. It sounds crazy, but I kind of think about it like that. It's just, I'm on an aircraft carrier with Maverick and Goose, As soon as the kid's got a good idea, got to be ready to go.
Can you give us an idea of some of the projects that you've been excited about? And I'm not talking just the big glamorous projects, but, the sort of growth that you've seen in young people?
Yeah, I don't really track, the amount of money that our girls make. That's not something that's really interesting. I'm way more concerned, in their confidence and that, their ability to express themselves. So we had one girl that started in year 6 making her own cosmetics, and she came out of her shell. It was amazing. And this kid had, a lot more confidence in herself to chase, her dreams. So after a year of doing that, she kind of moved on and she's like, you know what? I actually want to be a magician. So we're like, sweet, we're going to start teaching magic. And, created a program, and she made it onto the second round of Australia's Got Talent and got to perform, in front of her friends and thousands of people, doing something that she loves. And to me, like, that's a win. Like, I don't care where it goes from now. We've showed this girl that she can actually take action on something that she really cares about, and that people are going to back her up and believe in her and celebrate her for being awesome. And that's what we're looking for. We have girls that have their own fashion brands, that make their own cricket bats, which we give to girls in disadvantaged communities. But we also don't limit it to a business. Sometimes you just want to make a difference. So we've got girls that have been coaching and mentoring girls in disadvantaged schools to make, super random, right? A bunch of our girls were learning about, women's hygiene. So they decided to make some hygiene kits to help support a local charity. And that was a really great experience for them, and to interact with the local community. We had the chance to go overseas and connect with a school in Nigeria where the girls have a lot of issues around access to healthcare. So our girls donated some hygiene kits there, and the girls in Nigeria were like, hey, that's great, but you know what would be really helpful? We don't know where to go for access to trained doctors, particularly when women are giving birth. So one of the students in the class, her mum had died during childbirth because they didn't have access to quality medical care. So these girls said, hey, kits are great, but it'd be awesome. Could you help us make an app to find a hospital and get medical advice for that way that we can, our women can be safe? And for us, that's totally normal. It's like you just go on your phone or whatever, but they don't have access to that. So that was a project. A couple of girls were really passionate about supporting girls in another community, using their skills, which they love design. They were really great at making logos, websites, a mock app, and teaching another group of girls in a completely different context how to make an app for themselves. And that was really successful. The Nigerian girls, they won an entrepreneurship competition, and they're getting this app made, which has the potential to change lives. Like, no one's ever going to make any money out of that. But we showed our girls that you can make a difference with your skills and passions, and we've brought others along on the journey with us. And I think that's the best way to do it, is just to be, creating an ecosystem of kids supporting kids, and just structuring that, and spending a lot of time developing, the coaching and mentoring skills in the girls, or all the boys or the students that you have, so that way they can teach others and bring them along the journey with them.
Christian, I noticed that we've got a group from Macquarie College, and Macquarie's a high-performing school, much like the school that you're operating in. Do you find that just because of those demands of the senior years, that sometimes they need to, it's great at the year, 7, 8 and 9, but they have to back off in later years with those sort of projects because they sound pretty intense? Is that your experience?
It's always a challenge being in an academic context, because everyone knows that's why you're coming to school, and you're here to study and get into uni and get a good ATAR or whatever. I like to think that we're not offering something else as an add-on, that we need to create experiences that I can't miss. So I do some of my best teaching on the school holidays, with girls. They give up their school holiday because they really want to learn about something very specific. I had 15 girls, at 7:45 this morning, just lining up ready to get in because they were having a master class with a local marine biologist. It was only for that specific set of girls, but they loved it, and they were ready to go, and they were willing to get up early before their parents and come into work at school. So I don't see it as a question of, okay, how do we convince students to want to do these things? It's being able to offer them opportunities that they cannot miss because they love it, or being able to work with them so that way they can identify something that they want to do, that they're already doing at home or on the weekends, and give them the support and the resources to do it at school.
Just giving the opportunity to the Macquarie crew and to anyone else. If you've got any questions for Christian, now would be a great time, and at an appropriate time, Dave, if you can summarise those and put them to Christian, that would be great. Christian, one of the questions, I understand the need for some assessment, but I'm wondering, how do you go about like actually assessing this or recording the progress that young people are making?
So there's this guy, I can't remember his name, but I think he used to work at Templestowe College, something like that. Anyway, years ago, he told me that there's a loophole in the, in our curriculum guidelines, that if you create an individual learning plan and it's signed off by the principal and a parent, that you can pretty much teach whatever you want. Does that sound familiar?
I have heard the same notable educator say that, so yes.
I love writing individual learning plans, and it means that we're able to assess really specific skills, through a project. And that's a conversation that we have with teachers, with curriculum heads, and with parents. And pretty much, it really depends on what group of kids or what specific kid you're working on, but there is a way to link whatever area of interest they have to the curriculum. So if you've got a girl that loves making TikTok videos, great. That is an opportunity to build mastery in a whole suite of digital and creative media skills. But we're just making TikTok videos, and that's something that the kid can relate to, but you can take them to as far as you want along that process to absolute mastery, where you've covered so many transferable skills, and you can go in any direction you want. You just really need to have a great understanding of the curriculum first, so that way you can choose what you want to assess.
And I think that's a really good point. We do have some questions rolling in, which is great. I think that's a really good point, because I have seen it, and I've tried to do it when I was at TC, is sometimes we try and teach the students to unpack the assessment criteria down to the finer points so that they can then do that matching. I guess my understanding now, having sort of done this for a while, is that that's probably the job of the educator, is to be, as you say, be the clever person who knows the curriculum backwards and can backward map what they're doing. So the students just, really enjoying it and doing the TikTok video, and it's the teacher who actually knows how to backwards map that to the curriculum.
That's really interesting. I think I learned this skill being a primary school teacher. And I think the earlier, if anyone's ever taught prep or grade 1 or grade 2, you get really familiar with having a wide range of abilities and the imperative to teach people at different points of need at the same time. And if you're teaching grade 1, you can have kids that are reading at a prep level, might be reading at a grade 3 or a grade 4 level. So you need to know up and down the curriculum. I don't see that happening as much in secondary schools, but when you see the bigger picture of the whole scope of a curriculum, you can see what comes next. So you get a really good understanding of where kids are at in their, their literacy or their numeracy skills, and you can tailor anything that's entrepreneurial to those areas. But I think having just that broader scope of understanding where you can go with a curriculum really helps you to make judgments like on the fly, and you can go in a completely different direction straight away because you know what's possible to cover.
Dave, have we got a question there?
We do. Christian, I might jump in here and relay a question to you. It's coming from Aaron at Macquarie College. He's asking, does the school back the students financially for their projects, or are they expected to find funding themselves?
That is a great question. We have a policy of, kids can pitch for unlimited funding at any time. But I think from experience, kids don't need money. And I think so many programs that you can buy off the shelf, or you can, hire this person for an incursion or a workshop, they've got a component where you have to pitch for funding at the end. And unless you're in an accelerator program or you live in Silicon Valley or Tel Aviv, that's just not real life. So we always encourage our kids, the first step is not getting money. The first step is getting a customer. Because if you can't get a customer and make money from scratch, well then maybe you don't have a good idea, or you need to go in a different direction. So our focus is always on making money or making something from nothing before you worry about funding, because that's what happens in the real life. I don't go home and have a great idea to start a cool little side business, you know, making honey with my dad, and then turn around and say, you know what, I'm going to go get a bank loan, start it off. That's not a great way to start a business, by being in debt. And you don't want to start that with kids to tell them you can only start a business, or you can only, you know, take action on a great idea if you get money from someone else. So funding is a really small part of it. It absolutely applies, particularly when you might be working in a disadvantaged area, or there might be no access to money. But wherever you are, if the focus is on making money and making something happen from nothing, and finding customers and getting pre-sales and giving kids the chance to make their own money and be independent from the very start of a project, means that that's something that they can apply to every other area of their life for the rest of their lives, because they'll understand how to make something happen from nothing, as opposed to waiting for someone to give them, you know, a handout. That's the way we try and look at it.
Really interesting. Further to that, Marvin from Macquarie College has asked, given the skills and capacities that the girls are developing within the program, he's wondering to what extent local businesses are then wanting those students to work in their businesses and add value to the local community.
Another great question. I think engaging with the local community creates so many opportunities. And, you know, from experience, whether it's here in Mentone or other communities, people love supporting education, particularly in things that they're passionate about. And getting local community partners on board is quite easy if you have relationships. And the easiest way to do that is picking up the phone and talking to parents, you know, being there at parent-teacher night, info nights, school tours, whatever. Because you'll find that no matter what school you're in, you're going to have an insane amount of expertise in every area you could ever imagine in your parent group, or in your past students, or in your past parents. And that's the best place to start, particularly when you want to create really life-changing and incredible learning experiences. When you've got a lot of kids in your school, you've got a lot of parents with a lot of their own networks. And if you're able to leverage them, you can pretty much do anything.
It's some great questions, and we'd encourage participants, no matter where you're from, don't let Macquarie College dominate this conversation. No, we love them there. If there are any other questions, shoot them through to Dave. That raised so many issues for me there, Christian, because I'm not sure if you know, like I love the concept of making something for nothing, but I'm wondering, like I think that's good that you can make something out of nothing, but I think in some communities, a little bit of seed funding can really make a difference. And I'm not saying it's right, and you know, certainly, but just to give you a counter view, we put up $10,000 business startup grants every year, which was in direct comparison to the $20 Boss program that we all know about. The problem with the $20 Boss program, to me, you know, the marketing for it says, what would you do if you had $10 or $20? Well, for most of our kids, they'd take a friend to Macca's, you know, like it wasn't enough. And running a program, I'm not a great fan of the program. I guess it's better than nothing, but $20 Boss to me tells kids that they can't run a real business. And so at the school that I was at, we actually put up $2,500 business startup grants, and students had to pitch for those to a panel. So there was myself, there was a local entrepreneur and the assistant principal, and then 2 students. And we needed the AP to be there because, as all APs know, they're the ones that make it happen. The Print usually just says, yes, that's awesome, and then steps away. So you need the AP in there to help sort of like knock down some of those barriers. But the students, generally, the expectation was that they would pay that seed funding back, and if they couldn't pay it back, there had to be some sort of compensation paid in terms of talking about the learning that they had, you know, got through running that process. So I'm just wondering if both can coexist.
I think it's probably essential that they do exist. We have an accelerator program where we give away thousands every year, and any girl, not just at our school, any girl in Victoria can apply for funding and go through the same process of picking to an expert panel. And internally, we encourage girls can apply at any time for unlimited funding. And I mean, if a girl's got an amazing idea and they really need like 50 grand, well, then that's up to us to make it happen, because sometimes there's just amazing ideas floating around out there. I just think you need to be conscious of creating an environment where anything is possible, and offering, a cash incentive might be the best way to start that conversation with a group of students. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's something that I would have loved to have had when I was a kid. I started my first business in grade 5. I just made it happen. If I'd had access to some cash, it's a huge enabler. So there's nothing wrong with that. I just think the way that I like to look at it now, and I've been doing this for years, is that you can offer it, but I want my girls to choose not to take it, because they believe that they don't need the funding, because they can make it happen for themselves, but they know they can at any stage. And I think if you are able to offer opportunities, but give kids the opportunity to realize that, hey, you know what, I can pitch for $5,000, and if I really do need it, I will. But there's a lot of things you can do before you ask for money. And a lot of the time, the more that you've done before you ask for money, the more likely you are to get it. And there's no shortage of people that can give you almost in kind, which is worth more than money. So I've got it, through my own experience of, running businesses and being an entrepreneur. You can always ask for stuff that's more important than money. And it's easy for someone to say yes to. So if it's a kid that's asking for, we need $200, for printing costs. Well, that's something that as a teacher, you can say, you know what, we can do that. Because you use your printer, right? And you can do it. Or an example that I've used in the past is, when I was, I need some Wi-Fi for one of my businesses. And I knew that there was a tech company that loves, supporting, STEM projects. And they weren't able to, donate money to the program, but they were able to provide, free Wi-Fi dongles with unlimited Wi-Fi, which is super easy for them because they just have them in the cupboard. And that was, for this business, that was worth thousands. But for asking for any cash was going to get an instant no. But for asking for something that was an easy yes, we got thousands of dollars worth of value. So we try and, part of our process and methodology is you can't do anything without asking for help, right? But sometimes it's better to ask for something specific as opposed to asking for money. If you need access to, paper cups and stuff for a coffee business, yeah, you can ask for the money, or you can find someone that has an abundance of that and just ask them for leftovers, right? Or a donation, and you're going to get, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars worth of value by asking the right person the right question. And any entrepreneur that's been successful has really mastered that ability to ask, not only to ask for help, but to ask the right people for the right things.
I think that's a brilliant takeaway, to encourage and support kids to ask. I know I've said it to my own kids when they always want to make a change. I say you're at no now, so it can only go up from there. So ask, and particularly for young people, use that cutesy factor.
See, kids can get you got to use it, because kids can ask things that adults can't, and more people are more willing to support kids. No questions asked, because that's what. There are a lot of great people in our communities. And I think back to that whole concept of giving, kids access to seed funding. It's really even more important to give them access to more than that. It's support. Some of the most valuable experiences you can give a kid is someone that they admire or respect, to just sit down with them one-on-one and just give them some validation, some real advice, and to let the kid know that someone else actually cares and is taking them seriously. So it's really easy to distill entrepreneurship into businesses and to money and making money, but so much of the support that a young entrepreneur or a young person needs to have a business or to chase a passion in music or magic or whatever is a belief in themselves. And you can create that in a way that's manageable and scalable over, you know, hundreds or thousands of students if you leverage networks that you have, your school has, and your school community has to create this culture of support. But it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen if you just focus on the dollars.
Christian, the questions are coming in thick and fast now, so if you don't mind, I'll jump in and relay them to you.
Sure.
There's a couple of questions around the structure and context of the school. In particular, does the school run in what would be traditional school hours, and or do you have operations outside of that where young people have the capacity and opportunity to work on business outside of those hours? That's the first one.
Yep. You know, start bell, end bell, 8:35 to 3:35. We are available to work with girls before school, after school, on the school holidays. And I think it's just creating an environment where it's okay to say, hey, look, I'd love to, you know, have this opportunity to work with this, you know, this person that I saw on TV or I listened to on the radio. I think it'd be great. And can we create this experience, or can we create a class that doesn't exist? And we have our girls that run their own workshops or have after school classes for other girls and things that they're passionate about and that they have a specific skill set in. Our school holiday programs that I run are run by girls. We have girls that work in our enterprise academy that are employed to create programs for girls by girls. So it's a huge structure and framework, but it's manageable because, you know, in a school of 800 kids, we have a lot of staff that are already giving up their time to go over a SAC, that give some extra support for a test. So this happens, you know, in year 12 physics or, you know, grade 5. Teachers, you know, and parents are at school beforehand and after school and, you know, coming on the holidays. So we're not doing anything different. We're just doing different things.
If I then, thank you, Christian, if I then tag to that a question that came in from Fred, but he's interested to know about the learning model that's underpinning the structure and the system you have in place at the school. Could you talk to the learning model a little bit?
So we have a really well-developed design thinking framework that came about. We've got an amazing team here. Our curriculum leaders, our heads of year, have put a lot of work over years to really embed enterprise in our school curriculum, and that's been a whole approach from leadership. It's nothing that's you know, special compared to other great models of design thinking or entrepreneurship. I think it's a starting point to, if whatever structure you develop or that you find, it needs to be a starting point for you to personalize to your school's context and your cohort of kids. So where we started is different to where we are now, because our structures and frameworks have had to evolve to meet our girls' needs and also the opportunities available to us in our community. So I'm hesitant to recommend any model to start with, because it doesn't matter what framework you start with. It's all about building a deep understanding of individual kids, but also of your school. And you might have parents that have amazing networks or have their own charities or businesses that can help you create something special that no other school could do. Or maybe you just have an amazing group of kids or an amazing group of staff that have expertise in areas that no one else has, and you can tap into that and create something special.
I think, Christian, Fred's question is leaning also toward, do you teach concepts in advance of developing businesses in the traditional teaching sense, or do the concepts and the developmental phases that a young person goes through come as a result of being immersed in the experience? Would you like to pick up that point a little bit?
Because we're mandated to teach certain things, but we also understand, the growth of kids, sometimes they're not at the level we would expect them to be. So you can't anticipate that with entrepreneurship. I think you can use an entrepreneurship framework to identify areas where you can support kids in But that happens with a coordinated approach to understanding exactly where your kids are at, developmentally, and that can be done by having a really great collaborative culture where you're moderating, you're understanding where your kids are at and what levels they're at. Then you can find gaps or find new opportunities. But we don't, unless you're studying business management, you're not going to be learning how to start a business just for the sake of it. We don't have enough time with our kids to be teaching them skills that they might need, the things that they may or may not even care about.
Can I just jump back a moment, Christian, because I know you and I know your partner, and you both give so generously of your time to young people and always have. Not all schools are going to find themselves in that position. And in terms of sustainability, I always like it where models, can be operated within the current sort of resource allocation. One thing that we've explored is that it doesn't need to be done by teachers. You don't need to be a qualified teacher to do this. You can get entrepreneurs who have got a desire to give back to young people, who can then support somebody who's operating in the normal sort of time frame.
100%. I would be surprised if, no matter what school you're at, if you didn't have, entrepreneurs in your parent community that are willing and able to give back and support the school in this area.
And another option is that people, staff could be given the option. Somebody who does want to run this could perhaps start at 11 o'clock and finish at 5:30, so that actually became, having that opportunity for students to come in and work after hours is actually part of their allocated load. So
that would be fantastic. But I think, having experience, I've been teaching for nearly 10 years, that sometimes you just got to do extra work. And then to build the street cred and to build the trust that it's actually worth investing, time in a timetable. So I had to do a lot of this, when I was teaching, grade 6, grade 5. You do the extra stuff before school, at recess, at lunchtime, and after school, until you've proven that what you're doing actually has an impact. And that comes back to an earlier point of assessment. When something works, you can see it. If you're making a difference in a kid's life, you can see it. The parents are going to tell you about it. You know it when you see it. And that evidence will be clear if you're doing the right thing. And then you've got a reason to be released. You've got a reason to say, hey, this is just as important for, to have a teacher available in the library to talk to kids about these things as it is to have, a CRT covering this class. But it is, I'm always hesitant to say how easy it is to start, because a lot of teachers are not as privileged as I am and that have insane workloads and responsibilities. But some of these things you can really do in 5 minutes. If you have a normal teaching load, or you can find time once a week to create a special opportunity for one kid, whether that's staying back, one afternoon after school, whether it's spending half an hour during your lunch break, eating lunch with the kid and mentoring them, or getting an understanding of what they care about. You can do that one kid at a time. And one kid a week over 40 weeks, that's 40 kids. And it's scalable, but it's kind of scary when you think about big numbers.
I think the other thing is that for many teachers, they wouldn't want to give up that time, because they've got a mental mindset of the traditional classroom where you're doing things to students. Whereas when you do run entrepreneurial programs, or whatever you choose to call it, the kids are having so much fun. It actually energizes you, I know you and I have spoken about this. You sometimes wonder how you can be paid for doing it, because the kids are so passionate and they're crazy. It was the whole reason that we went into teaching in the first place.
Entrepreneurship is awesome. I mean, passion and enthusiasm are infectious. And when kids are really excited about something, whether it's you, someone else is going to really resonate with that. And it's just a matter of saying, you know what, if this kid's super excited about TikTok videos, that's not me. But I know, the teacher next door loves that stuff, and they should be working on this project together. Or if the kid's super excited about chess, I don't know, but there's going to be a teacher that can resonate with that kid's level of excitement. And this brings along other people. I like to think that when you, I don't know what you think about this, but I heard this so much, in my early years of teaching, that you need to be teaching 100% of kids 100% of the time. And it's a really nice slogan, but it is almost impossible to, implement, 24/7 when you teach in prep. So I like to think, if you focus 100% on one kid, whether it's for 5 minutes for an hour a week, you are going to suck in the people around them. If you create a program for one specific kid, you will find there'll be 3 or 5 that are just as passionate and willing, and you bring along on the journey. And word of mouth is the best way to build a business, because when customers are happy, they talk, and kids are the same. That was awesome. I want to do that too. And you can leverage that, that, hey, how come I didn't get to do that? That is the best way to get a kid into a program. It's like, you can, man. What do you want to do? Let's do it. And then the next kid says, hey, how come I didn't get to? And then, bang, you've got an opportunity to create something that a kid doesn't want to miss. And then you're in business.
I think the other thing that can really scale that up is, once students have experienced success, you can then use them to support other students in their projects. It doesn't all have to be about the teacher once you've got a number of successful projects up and running.
Oh, the best way to do it is by, getting kids to teach kids. And it's step by step,
And adults.
100%. But I just really believe in that, taking personalized learning to the extreme, that when you just go super deep with one person, that person is going to enable others, and they can continue to enable others. And then you've got a community of people that have amazing skill sets. You don't need to know everything, but you need to be able to enable others.
I think one of the interesting things is, not many schools have somebody that has a position like yours, to oversee enterprise and entrepreneurship. And yet, I've seen many schools where, the number of support staff that, for instance, or teaching staff indeed, that run like the library, it would seem like an ideal place where you could have a staff member in the library. So they're still providing general sort of supervision and fulfilling some of those functions, but they're also, you know what I think of librarians. As a dyslexic, they're on my cutting list, but by actually having somebody in a resource centre space that's got that entrepreneurial flair, it seems like a no-brainer to me.
You know what? And I think that you're right. And it doesn't have to be a teacher. It could be a really passionate parent, ex-student, grandparent, whatever. But none of this is possible without the time and a space for really great conversations with your kids, and being able to say, hey, let's go with it straight away. There's a computer. Let's pick up a phone. Let's call this person straight away. Let's walk down to Safeway and buy this or whatever. And also, I hated school, like, as a kid. I hated it. And I wanted to get out as quick as possible. And I look at school through that lens, that there are going to be kids that hate coming to school. So I try to cater for them, and that's my bias. That whatever I'm doing, it needs to be awesome, because there are going to be kids that don't want to be here, as opposed to the mindset of, okay, cool, well, all the kids are in my classroom, so they want to learn, so I'm going to start teaching.
Well, mate, that sort of brought us to an end time-wise. There were 3 things that we wanted covered today, and we've covered one of them. So we're going to have to have you back. Thank you so much to our first test audience. Thank you for your involvement. Thank you for your questions. We want to do more of these, and so obviously we need your feedback as to how we can make them more engaging, more interactive, more entertaining. You might have some sample topics that you want to share with us. We're trying to confine them to sort of 45 minutes, and hopefully it might fit in with some of the PD time that you might have at school. Again, I just really want to thank Christian for making yourself available as our first guinea pig. And, I think I speak for everyone. It's been inspiring. And if I had to be taught by a teacher, it'd be you.
Well, I really appreciate it. And a big shout out to everybody listening today. You're doing amazing work, and just keep being awesome.
Excellent. Thanks, FSA. And we'll get out a schedule and let you know what's coming up next. Thanks so much for your time. Have a great evening.